Meeting Point for Wandering Imaginaries by Yolanda Wood. The wondrous mystery of a trip creates the so-awaited possibility of a meeting point, where a trajectory ends and a fruitful dialogue begins with the unknown, thus revealing a roadmap to passes to come. Case in point, the city of Paris, which, as the years passed, became such a focal point, allowing all possibilities of relationships, specifically for the artistic world, as this is where the most creative and fascinating exchanges were initiated. Paris is a city beyond time, and it does make sense that there exists an art gallery whose name perfectly defines that intent, INTEMPOREL. Both artists and art pieces bring forth what can be called wandering imaginaries, coming to a meeting point. The exhibit will take place in this aesthetic realm that functions with its own temporal codes. It facilitates the discovery of an unusual dialogue, on one side an American discourse, even though recognized as specifically Caribbean, on the other a legendary Europe brimming with its own past and present history. Thus, an exhibition out of the ordinary that does not attempt to accentuate the differences born out of that geography, but on the contrary endeavors to present each artist's individuality along with what is interesting to art, the universality of artistic emotion. The pieces being exhibited cover a vast period of time and a field of references that is even larger. Through them, multiple impressions and reflections are intertwined, and though, as they are placed in relationship, they go beyond their original context, creating an art space that escapes any specific rooting. It is in that perspective that this exhibit is a must, becoming a nexus beyond schools, trends, and style, but still does not pretend to be an argument to federate nor discriminate art pieces. Therefore, here you will meet artists who were born before and after the second half of the 20th century, art pieces that are posterior and more recent ones, masters, recognized artists, and emergent ones. This exhibition offered to better understand what is specific to each artist, their imaginaries. Indeed, there is a divergence between the means and the languages at hand. A collection of engravings with mixed techniques representing Catalonia, thanks to the emblematic artists of last century such as Miro, Dali, and Tapies, facing the pieces usually found at Intemporel Gallery. Through its diversity, the exhibit unveils the emotional switch that occurred in art. Surrealism as much as abstraction were central to the art new directions, in the very heart of the symbolic power centers and peripheral spaces, witnessing the historical artistic shift in creative process, such was the case in the Caribbean. Foremost, it was abstractionism, such as the renewing influences of arte povera and informal art, that boosted a change in aesthetic norms and art critics by placing to the forefront the notion of the supreme freedom of creative subjectivity in the use of artistic resources. A new universe became wide open for the artists who understood that reality could now be created rather than merely be represented. All of this can be seen in the pieces being displayed, even when the figuration is still clearly present. What it's about is nothing less than a moment of major interconnectivity, unusual and without precedent, that could be fathomed as the internationalization of art, born from multiple existential shifts of periods, of emotional and conceptual changes, as well as of successive crises where distances between territories are narrowed. However, art does not position itself in opposition to reality, nor does it distance itself from it. It only offers to simply create itself from a cultural and imaginary point of view. A common approach brings closer together these spaced-out pieces. The wandering imaginaries of the artists allow to reduce dramatically the physical distances between Catalonia and Paris, and even more so between the old continent and the Caribbean. The freestyle and spontaneity of the drawing, the thickness of the pigments, the duration of the art piece intrinsically alive in the art piece itself, the autonomy of the images, all of the above points to areas of exploration that allow to reach into a cultural consciousness in which the flexibility of the language of signs has not only simplified the artistic codes by a process of an ever-increased syntheticness and expressiveness, but also increase the awareness of the art lover in order to reveal the way in which reality and imaginary erase the borders between different geographical spaces in order to bring together artistic imaginaries to a meeting point called intemporal.